Lane Kiffin, I've said many times, I think he should stay at Ole Miss. That is my take on this. He has proven he can win at the highest level at Ole Miss by nature of them right now trending towards being a college football playoff kind of team. But we've had some motion, if you will, around a one Lane Kiffin when it comes to what's being said about him in the public eye. A couple of reports out there. One report is that his family visited Baton Rouge and Gainesville, respectively. So if you're not going to take the Florida or LSU job, why is your family visiting those different cities? Interesting. The other report out there is that Ole Miss, essentially, the AD over there, Keith Carter, gave him an ultimatum of sorts. Now, Lane Kiffin has since gone on the Pat McAfee show and said, you know what, I did not get an ultimatum. That wasn't true. But the whole story that was reported is that, hey, Ole Miss is like, Lane, if you're going to stay, we'd love to have you. But if you're not going to stay, we got to know here, brother. We got to know if you're going to be our head coach. Because if you're not going to be our head coach, we'd like to hire a head coach on our timing and not be left in the third wave of this cycle trying to pick up the pieces and taking the quote-unquote scraps, is how I'm phrasing this thing, of the whole coaching carousel. Andy Staples has a great article out on this right now on all3.com. Does a tremendous job on the video side as well, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel. But he has a quote in his own article talking about Lane Kiffin that I think lays out where Ole Miss is at perfectly, even if it's not verbatim laid out from Ole Miss saying, hey, we need you to decide by the beginning of Egg Bowl week, Lane. We need to know by that timeline, which was the original report. More or less, that's still kind of the case if you're Ole Miss. Andy's article says, quote, the coaching carousel is a giant game of musical chairs, and right now Ole Miss doesn't know if it needs to put a chair in the circle. That's why Carter needs an answer. The next question is this. What does Carter do when he gets one? So the plot thickens. But if you follow Lane Kiffin on social media, then congratulations, you have a tremendous follow on your hands. He's always tweeting hilarious things. He's trolling. He's one of the best follows on social media. But he tweeted something out yesterday that I thought was super interesting as the feel heats up around LSU and Florida when it comes to his potential to take one of those jobs and be the next head coach in Baton Rouge or Gainesville. He tweeted out a picture from seemingly like his daily reading. A number of days, it seems like. I think he talked about it on McAfee, but essentially he has a different, I don't want to call it devotional, but it's next to that. One message for every day of the 365 days of the year. On day 223, Lane decides to tweet out this. How do you know what to do next? You have to ask yourself, honestly, what your 90-year-old self would advise you to do. What would they wish they have done? You ask yourself, honestly, what you've sensed from the beginning. What have you ignored? What have you quieted and distracted yourself from? You make two lists. This is where it gets interesting. You make two lists, the positives and the negatives, and you weigh them. And if there's one thing on the left that overpowers the dozen things on the right, you trust that. You ask yourself what path will make you more of the person you are meant to be. So let's be real here. It's very funny that Lane Kiffin's tweeting that out as he is being linked to the LSU and the Florida job, and his family is visiting Baton Rouge and Gainesville. He's talking about making a pros and cons list or tweeting out a message about a pros and cons list. That's hilarious. So I want to give this disclaimer again. I think that Lane Kiffin should stay at Ole Miss. I've said that from the jump. I've said as much that I think he will stay at Ole Miss. However, as we get more and more traction around his family visiting those cities, and it seems to be a lot of people that know things are leaning towards him taking either the LSU or the Florida job. To me, there's only so much smoke to where you can imply there's fire. Like at every single turn, Lane Kiffin had an opportunity to turn down his intrigue in the Florida and LSU job and say, no, I'm staying at Ole Miss. I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving, Leo DiCaprio style. I'm staying at Ole Miss. And he has not yet done that. So the further we get into this, I'm like, man, if it looks like a duck, if it walks like a duck, it might just be a duck. So I want to go back to what that messaging that he reads daily just implied. Make a pros and cons list. Well, we're going to do that for the LSU job and the Florida job as it stands right now. So the pros around the LSU job, the reason why Lane Kiffin would take that job, to me are as follows. One, track record for national championships. If it's about winning a national championship, you got a pretty good blueprint there to do that, Coach Kiffin. Nick Saban, national title. Ed Orgeron, national title. Les Miles, national title. I know Brian Kelly didn't win one, but I think we can all put two and two together and say, okay, if you think you are as good a head coach as Ed Orgeron is, and you can recruit the level those coaches did, you can win whatever you want to at LSU. That is very much so proven by the blueprint of what previous coaches did there. Also, another pro, the GM out there is elite. Like Austin Thomas, I think is quietly, based on just how people view GMs in college football, one of the best in the business. I think you will have someone there helping you put together a roster that is creme de la creme. Also, the recruiting grounds in Louisiana. It's proven if you put a fence around the boot, you can win whatever you want to win. That's what Nick Saban did, what Les Miles did, what Ed Orgeron did. Like there is nothing that you can't accomplish if you lock down the high school recruiting grounds of Louisiana. Let's be real too. Everyone that goes to high school in the state of Louisiana, more often than not, they want to be a Tiger. There's some ridiculous stat out there about the number of high schools that have the gold and purple as their high school colors, and they have the mascot, the Tiger. Like everyone in the state of Louisiana, you grow up rooting for and wanting to go to LSU. That is the standard. So when it comes to recruiting that territory, a little bit easier than recruiting maybe some other states where there's a couple different schools in the mix and you're trying to be the state in the school. That's not the deal at Louisiana. No knock on La Tech, but that's pretty much how things stand should you want to be the next head coach at LSU if you're Lane Kiffin. Now, the cons for LSU, not many, but there is a couple. One, it feels a little bit dysfunctional right now. If the governor's getting involved in a coaching search, usually that doesn't really scream cohesion and harmony and, things happen here going off without a hitch. Like, that probably is one thing to look at. Also, if we want to get really in the weeds here, I don't think Lane Kiffin will ever have a problem at the quarterback position as long as he's a head coach. However, I think there's a question mark you walk into should you take that job in Baton Rouge. Now, again, I think Lane Kiffin, whether he brings someone from Ole Miss, whether he goes to the portal, or whether he just gets the most out of a Michael Van Buren, like that is something to at least acknowledge a little bit here if you're Lane Kiffin. But you would at least have to address the quarterback position and how you're going to go about doing that if you're Lane Kiffin. It's one of the cons of taking the LSU job. But again, not many. So again, I think he should stay at Ole Miss. I've said I think he will stay at Ole Miss, but I don't know if I feel that way quite as much anymore in terms of what Lane Kiffin's going to do. The logo of LSU is another pro I meant to mention. You walk into a high school with that logo on a quarter zip, you're probably making some heads turn at the very least. So, Cato, we've talked about this a lot off the air. Everyone's kind of just guessing at this point as to what Lane Kiffin's going to do. I think Lane Kiffin, we've heard people say even he doesn't know what he's going to do just yet. Where are you at on the pros and cons of taking the LSU job? We'll get to Florida here in a second. Anything to add there? Any other thoughts you're having around Lane Kiffin maybe being the next guy to wear that visor in Baton Rouge?
Yeah, I think great pros and cons list. I think starting with the pros, one pro that was left out was the cuisine in Louisiana. I think that is a regional cuisine like no other, some would say, and you can only get it that good there. So I think that's a big pro for Lane. I think even just the idea of LSU being the premier team in the state, I think it can't go, you can't overstate that. They're the premier team in the state. As soon as you become LSU's head coach, you are all of a sudden the most watched and viewed and popular employee in the state. And I think when you look at Lane's popularity that he's garnered himself throughout his career, him being at a place at LSU, I think to me puts his brand, his face at just a different pedestal, which starts at the state level where, again, you have no competition in the state as far as eyeballs, attention, care factor. No other colleges are competing with you, but even the Saints, the Pelicans, no one's touching LSU football in that state. And I think him having his personality, I think it would take a celebrity status to another level as well, which most coaches don't care about that. But you like to think that's something Lane Kiffin cares about. Another thing too, I think that's kind of underrated is just the offensive skill player, just track record. And I think that obviously his offense speaks for itself. We've seen what he's done over the years throughout his career and at Ole Miss. But on top of just being in LSU, being in Louisiana and getting top talent from in the state, there is just such a precedent for elite wide receivers, great running backs, quarterback play. I think to me, the magnetic force and just the culture and the expectation. And when you close your eyes and you think of an LSU player the last couple of years, it's someone with the ball in their hands, scoring. And it's different for everyone, obviously. But I think that too is just something that it's cool, man. The LSU, it's a little thing, but the receivers always have these cool celebrations that other people are always biting. They're, to me, LSU skill players. Yeah, the gritty. They're tricking out right now. They do so many different things. They're such an important part right now, I think, of just the the cool high school and up culture of being a skill player, being a wide receiver, that like Lane could kind of leverage that in a very interesting way. I think all of the pros aside, though, the biggest con is the sense of dysfunction that's going on at LSU right now. And it's hard to quantify, but it feels like it's a really important thing. And I think Lane is cool with drama, but I think he likes to be the drama. Like, he likes to stir it up. And then all of a sudden you have GMs, athletic directors, governors, all getting their hands in the pot, and Lane's trying to get in there too. To me, that's a huge con for Lane, because I feel like he made it as far as he did at Ole Miss, being able to run his own show, do his own thing. I think LSU's the one spot out of all the destinations he could go to that could maybe infringe on him being able to do things his own way, especially if things don't work for a split second and people want to have their voices heard and make their decisions. So I think that's a giant con. Like, the list of pros is obviously way longer. LSU, like you mentioned, iconic brand, national championship pedigree, the skill you get in the area, all that stuff. But man, that can all come crashing down if there is not enough people seeing eye to eye at the highest level of your football team, organization, and for your athletic program in general. So I think it's a very interesting spot. It's a team in a very interesting place. I think the way that Brian Kelly's exit went probably isn't like helping with LSU trying to make this pitch, as they're still trying to argue with Brian Kelly over his buyout money. Like, these are all kind of red flags. You have their governor on TV. Like, there's just a lot of red flags on that side of things. So I think that's a big con, that there might be more pros, but that con can kind of even the playing field, I think, when you talk about the impact of that compared to the others.
And you brought up a good point when it comes to the function that he maybe would potentially be lacking at an LSU as it stands right now. Maybe if he takes that job, there's some guarantees of things being more cohesive. I have to imagine that would be a factor. But what he has at Ole Miss right now, like, that thing's humming.
Yeah.
He is judge, jury, executioner, the president, the governor, the secretary. Like, he is all of those things at Ole Miss. So to surrender, in theory now, I don't know how you have any – I don't know where there's a world where Lane Kiffin has as much control as he has right now at Ole Miss, at LSU. I think it's a great point. One more thing, though, that you mentioned I want to amplify, the cool factor of Lane Kiffin. He's made Ole Miss cool. Yep. And I'm not here to say Ole Miss wasn't cool before, but it's definitely cooler now. If you pour the Lane Kiffin cool sauce on an LSU, like that, I mean, that's just like gasoline and fire together. That could be kismet.
Yeah, that'd be an electric duo, man. You think about like Lane Kiffin week 1, and like Joe Burrow pulls up to the game, and Jamar Chase is at the game, and Odell Beckham's at the sideline. They're dapping up Lane Kiffin. Like, to me, like, doubling down on the coolness of LSU, because LSU is like, I think, unequivocally one of the coolest just brands, and just has cool players. Like, they're doing cool stuff, man. And it's even across their sports. I mean, like, the peak of them having Jaden Daniels there, and an Angel Reese there, and a Haley Van Lith, like, they're just a cool program, man. And they have the NIL stuff figured out, and it's a destination. You know what I mean? So I think putting him in a destination when he was quite literally at the kind of the opposite of that, to be honest, a place that no one's thinking of as a must go to spot outside of Mississippi, I think. I mean, it'd be a multiplying factor that'd be very fun to watch for sure.
Lane State University, LSU, will be kind of fresh, kind of cool to market with. The question is, as that reading suggests, is there one reason on any other pros and cons list he has that he's weighing out that outweighs any other option that he's currently trying to sift through when it comes to staying or going to Florida or taking the LSU job? Remains to be seen.